So anyway, I just sort of started working for myself, and that's, you know, been very stimulating, and it sort of continues till the present day, really. I haven't retired from work. A lot of the time work's retired from me, but, you know, I'm still looking for projects and working on a few unpaid projects, you know. And because of the direction of the work, it sort of changed from commodity, what I still regard as mainstream agricultural economics, but anyway, it sort of shifted into environmental, water, irrigation, all that sort of stuff.
Maybe during that period, when you were working for yourself, one of the highlight and one of the biggest issues in Australian agriculture was the wool crisis, and you were quite
but actually
prominent.
That was a hangover from my previous work. I only actually, for my entire involvement in the wool crisis, I got paid $1,500.
But you had quite a profile for a while there.
Oh yeah, but that's what the Centre for International Studies paid me to write that monograph, $1,500, right? Yeah. So everything else was sort of...
Followed from that?
Well, it didn't follow from that. It followed from my long-term interest in the topic, and also almost passion or zeal.
Tell us about your...
I'd been greatly offended by the International Wool Secretariat. I guess it's a lot to do with my own personal politics, and I think if you believe that the government has got a role and the state has a role, one thing it absolutely depends upon is an honest bureaucracy. And if you haven't got an honest bloody bureaucracy, you're stuffed. The whole, social democratic experiment is rooted. If you can't rely on the institutions. Australia, for example, is blessed by a fantastic central bank and a fantastic Bureau of Statistics. Plenty of other parts of the world you can't trust the bloody banks. So I think once you see, I don't know whether, a lot of people still think that I exaggerate the degree of dishonesty within the IWS, but I don't think you possibly could.
Tell me about your experiences going around during the wool crisis talking to groups of farmers.
Well, the sort of ability to polarise an audience, if you want to only drink with a minority of people after it's all finished. But anyway, I found it was quite rewarding, and anyway, I was saying what I believed, and I don't just think it was supported by personal experience. It was supported by a long-term education. When Jack Jalloy and Ross Parrish wrote their monograph, I was sitting alongside and they were showing it to me. I saw the debate between Ross Parrish and Jack Jalloy and Sir William Gunn and Sir William Vines, and Jack and Ross wiped the floor with them in a technical sense, except the grazier audience just could not believe, the farmer audience thought they are the practical men, so I just, the logic, the empirics, the politics of it, the institutional aspects of it all. So I had absolutely no doubt that whatever I was trying to say, then I was in constant contact with lots of people who were dissidents within the organisation. So I didn't. But I had some quite amusing experiences, like in Merredin. But sometimes like I remember one guy in Merredin coming up after my talk there and saying, he was a farmer at Esperance, he said, I have worked too bloody hard to let these people take a risk with me, and I'm going back and reorganising my bloody farm business accordingly. And And he also put forward a very logical argument. He said, because if you're right, I really need to. But he said, if they're right, it won't really matter all that much anyway. I can just switch back. So I thought that was a very subtle point. So he just, he knew that he was following the rational.
Yeah. Okay.
And the odd student, contacted me because Bob Richardson used to come and lecture the students that I taught in agricultural marketing, and one student wrote to me and said, I talked my father out of supporting the reserve price scheme, and I thank you, which was lovely, really. Yeah. And, so we're not broke and our neighbours are. So.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to change the subject a bit now, and ask you about AARES. So I've seen you at plenty of AARES conferences. Would you like to reflect on the importance, the value, the role of AARES?
Well, I first went there in I think the first one I attended was 1963. So I guess looking back on it, there was a lot of rivalries between the key figures in the field. A lot of them, they're all on sort of good terms and stuff, but a lot of them had different angles on things, and I think I sort of arrived at the right time in the sense that everything was expanding and there wasn't much bloody competition for jobs, and I was bloody lucky. But an earlier generation, they were competing for jobs like buggery, and there was a few bloody tensions there, and people thought differently about various aspects of the subject. And anyway, there's a few. They're pretty powerful personalities, in my opinion. I mean, Keith Campbell. I mean, he'd be the only person on the planet who had supervision from Milton Friedman and Galbraith, because he went to Chicago, did the sort of graduate courses there, and then he went to Harvard and did it again. Then he went back to Chicago for PhD. So he was an incredibly well-equipped person, and very strong-minded. And Jack Lewis was a person of great power, and Chapper. I mean, he was sort of, they're pretty interesting, because agriculture is a huge part of the economy. So it was all thought it was pretty important and relevant. And
what would be your observations about how the society has evolved?
Probably the only thing that's probably persisted is a lot of drinking. And I suspect there's probably less drinking now, because young people don't drink as much as people used to a generation ago. But certainly, there were some guys like John Quilty. Quilty could have made a living as a stand-up comic without any shadow of a doubt. So there were all those conferences, they were a real sort of social highlight and pretty good things. And I think one of the really strongest traditions was the sort of differential way those sort of early figures treated young people to the way they behaved amongst themselves. They're really sort of bloody encouraging. Like most people would think that Keith Campbell was a really stern sort of man, but he's a really, to me, he was extraordinarily sort of friendly. And he used to write you notes if you wrote something that he liked, and all sorts of courtesies, so they're really, really civilised group of people, really, I'd say.